Oh, hey, everybody. We got a great show for you tonight. Senator Adam Schiff was my guest. We harmonized on Seven Bridges Road. What a voice, I cried. But before we start the show, I want to let you know something that I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season. The network will be ending The Late Show in May. And yeah, I share your feelings. It's not just the end of our show, but it's the end of The Late Show on CBS. I'm not being replaced. This is all just going away. And I do want to say, that the folks at CBS have been great partners. I'm so grateful to the Tiffany Network for giving me this chair and this beautiful theater to call home. And of course, I'm grateful to you, the audience, who have joined us. Every night, in here, out there, all around the world, Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea. I'm grateful to share the stage with this band, these artists over here every night.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And as you can see here, the news coming down today, many people haven't seen it yet because it hasn't the Late Show has not broadcasted yet at this time of the airing of this podcast. But the Late Show, Stephen Colbert, are no more. It is over. And for many people, this is let's be honest, really nobody cares about late night television anymore. The medium has changed so much that these shows don't make any more money. They just don't. And CBS, of course, comes out as they announced their plan to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert next year. The network claims that this is purely a financial decision. And of course it is. The show just wasn't generating enough money because the advertisers realized that nobody's watching. Now, according to a CBS spokesman, and I quote, "We consider Colbert irreplaceable and will retire the Late Show franchise in May of 2026. We are proud that Stephen called CBS home, and he and the broadcast will be remembered in the pantheon of greats that graced late night television." That is utter nonsense. Stephen Colbert was one of the worst hosts that you will ever see on late night television. This guy, Letterman, was fantastic in the beginning. When he was on at 12:30 on NBC for the late night with David Letterman, he was fantastic. He was witty. He pissed people off. He had crazy stuff going on. The Andy Kaufman stuff with Jerry Lawler, Harvey Picar. I mean, he hosted a show on an airplane once. It was fresh. It was new. It was great. It was almost like watching a frat house on TV. And there wasn't that much into it. It was just Letterman with, Paul, whatever his name was. And they did some shows, and they did stupid pet tricks, and they did some great stuff. I remember the years where they used to have Eddie Van Halen playing with Paul Schaefer in there. And the studio was tiny. The audience was tiny, but it was wonderful. He then goes into 1993 to CBS. And he did very well for a little bit until the Oscar debacle. And then he went totally political. And the show just fell apart. Nobody watched it because it was political, not funny. Well, Colbert wasn't funny at all. And he made the show so political and so one-sided and leftist. I mean, he never ever would poke fun at politicians or celebrities that were on the left side. What made Johnny Carson great was he mocked everyone. And to this day, I really don't know what Johnny Carson's political views were. But he killed everybody, and he hated Ronald Reagan, but he was never vulgar or obscene with him. He went after Jimmy Carter. He went after, Democrat politicians. It was a different world, of course, back then, but he hit everybody. Nowadays, these late night shows, they're so one-sided and so biased that people just get turned off by them. Now, Colbert addressed the situation during the taping of tonight's show, as you saw. He learned about this on Wednesday evening. And if you're a CBS executive, or if you work for CBS, or if you work for any network, your sleepless nights have begun, if they haven't begun already. Because the media has changed so much now that network television is basically ho-hum yesterday's news. With social media, with podcasting, with streaming, people just have so many more options to go to, and different political takes to go to, right? If you're a right-winger, you can go on Rumble, you can go on Spotify, you can go even to a certain extent on YouTube, and you can find somebody who you share their ideals with. You don't have to sit around and watch this drivel. And television, network television, is a very, very expensive, very, very risky proposition, especially now that you have these major corporations buying these networks out. They don't want to deal with losses. And as you see here, Colbert delivering the news from the Late Show desk that the television host was appreciative, as you saw, to the network giving him this platform. And we heard the audience boo a bit, but that's to be expected. He did point out that he wasn't being replaced, that the show was just going away. That is a disaster for CBS. Now, if you know anything about television, I was in the television game. There are 5 money-making slots for TV that are highly, highly competitive and very, very important. Of course, the first slot is your morning broadcast, right? Your Good Morning America's, your Today Show. They used to be cheap to produce and extremely lucrative. Now, nothing is cheap. Now you have to pay these hosts tens of millions of dollars to show up, and a lot of times they don't make the ratings that they used to, because now you have, like I said, cable news came in, streaming, podcasting. The world has just changed. The second big slot was your local 5 and 6 o'clock evening news. Very, very important, because that's when people are getting home. That's when they're sitting down for dinner, and then they pop open the news. Your third would be your national news broadcasting network broadcast. The CBS Evening News, of course, famously with Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather, and now it's with Norah O'Donnell. In the 80s and 90s, it was with Peter Jennings on ABC, Tom Brokaw on NBC, and these were very, very competitive slots. The fourth was, of course, the most important, and that is your primetime slots, which is from 8 p.m. to 11 through to 11 p.m. That's when you have your sitcoms. That's when you have your hour shows, and these, as you know, very, very competitive, very, very expensive. Primetime television is extraordinarily expensive. 11 o'clock, we then go back into our local evening news, and then at 11:30 we would start our late night broadcasts. The Tonight Show, Late Show with Colbert, and I forget what Jimmy Kimmel's show is called. But for many, many years, it was a 2-horse race, right? It was the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and against David Letterman's Late Show. Now it's not even a 2-horse race. It's not a 3-horse race. It is a 4, 5, 6-horse race. These 3 late night hosts, Colbert, Kimmel, and Fallon, are doing so poorly with their audiences that they're losing out to Greg Gutfeld on Fox News. And I'm telling you that Greg Gutfeld is not making anywhere near the amount of money that any one of those three guys are making on network television. And he's beating them in the ratings. Now, CBS's decision marks the end of the network's late night programming. This started in 1993, as we said, with David Letterman. CBS was never able to find an answer to Johnny Carson. Really, nobody was. ABC didn't even try. They had a show called, well, it's still on, called Nightline. Nightline started, if you're old enough to remember, it started basically as a show following the Iran hostage situation that happened in 1979. Ted Koppel was basically broadcasting every night about counting the days that the hostages were in that in the Iranian embassy, the American embassy held hostage by the Iranians. And then once that ended, it was making so much money and it was such a staple that Ted Koppel and Nightline stayed on for almost 20 more years after that. Fox tried to defeat Johnny with Joan Rivers. That was a disaster. CBS used Pat Sajak, of all people, for a little bit. That was a disaster. Arsenio Hall was syndicated, and he did pretty well until Jay Leno and his power brokers at NBC, once he took over the Tonight Show, threatened every celebrity in Hollywood that if they went on Arsenio Hall, they were not going to win the Tonight Show. And the Tonight Show, of course, won that battle out because Arsenio Hall was just basically a flash in the pan. But we move on to Colbert, and after Letterman leaves in 2015, it's been suggested that his ratings were pretty solid for this format. But again, they were losing money front and center. They were losing to a guy who's not even on network TV. So maybe he was beating Kimmel, maybe he was beating Fallon, but the advertisers and these corporations, they were looking, and Paramount, they were looking at his ratings and the money that the show would cost, and it just wasn't. It was a failure. The show wasn't financially viable anymore. Now, Colbert hosted close to 1,700 episodes in his 10 years on the show. And the first show, of course, aired in September of 2015. Colbert, of course, was on cable TV. He had the Daily Show and he had the Colbert Report, which was basically mocking Bill O'Reilly's O'Reilly Report that was on Fox News. He pretended to be a conservative TV host mocking Bill O'Reilly and other conservatives. Now, is this just a financial decision? No, it's not. There were rumblings that Colbert was in trouble and on the chopping block ever since Skydance Media, which is this huge media corporation, began putting into works the purchase of acquiring Paramount Global, which is CBS's parent company. CBS was suffering blow after blow after blow after the 60 Minutes debacle, which recently they settled a lawsuit with Donald Trump in order to keep the peace. Skydance and Paramount, the merger, all depended on getting Trump out of the way and getting this merger done as quickly and as quietly as possible. So that's why they paid this $16 million lawsuit, just to get this out of the way. Now, we'll get to how that hurt Colbert and a few other people later on. But the network had already canceled After Midnight with some guy named Taylor Tomlinson. That replaced the Late Late Show with James Corbin about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Neither one of those shows were rating successes. Now, The Late Show is not the only, and Stephen Colbert are not the only casualties of these late night wars and these late night airings of left-wing, one-sided content. ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live is set to have its final season of a 3-year deal in the fall. So ABC will not be having a late night show either. Only NBC will trudge on. And Fallon and Seth Meyers, who, I mean, so he's even worse than all these guys combined, signed deals to last a year to continue their shows through. I think they signed I think they signed last year to continue their shows to 2028, and that might be the end of them too, because these ratings just are not there. And if the ratings aren't there, the advertisers don't want to pay the exorbitant amount of money that these networks are demanding. And when the money stops coming from the advertisers, it's over. It's over, Johnny. Now, the historic run, or they always word it as historic, is CBS's 32-year attempt to finally be relevant in the late night arena, which they have never been. CBS has always had a problem with a morning show and a late night show. They had great primetime shows for many, many years. Their local news was always very, very tight. And they ruled the evening news at 7 o'clock, well, 6:30 and then 7, it changed to 7 o'clock, when they had Walter Cronkite, and for a long time with Dan Rather, until Dan Rather was fired for lying about George Bush. And all of this has a connection to politics. Because when they lie about politics, or if there's any sort of inconsistency there, what happens to a news network, what happens to a network in general, is they lose their credibility and people start to turn away, and then the network, the advertisers start losing money, and they pull their money, and then these shows go the way of the dodo bird. And this is the reason why Colbert is gone. It's purely a financial decision against the changing and challenging backdrop in late night. Now, CBS made it very clear, and this is nonsense if you ask me, but a CBS executive also said, and I quote, "It is not related in any way to the show's performance, its content, or other matters happening at Paramount." Well, if it's not, why mention it? I mean, if you love Colbert's content, if he's doing very well on the show and it has nothing to do with this merger, why mention it? Why is it going away? If it's making money, if people love it, if you got the ratings, then Sky Media would have no problem keeping it on. But it is about performance, and it is about content, and it does have something to do with the Paramount merger. Of course it does. Now, Colbert took over in 2015, and he leaned heavily into liberal politics, and he leaned heavily in the Trump era, mocking Trump, mocking not only Trump, but Trump supporters. And he became a platform for Democrat politicians. Last month, and this is when the rumblings began, Colbert welcomed New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani right before the Democrat nomination election. And he let Mamdani bloviate his message in front of everyone. And a lot of people think that might have helped him Now, there's been speculation about the future of Paramount-owned late-night programs, which also include The Daily Show on Comedy Central. And this planned corporate merger with Skydance Media is expected to take place later within the year. Colbert has been outspoken, has been a critic of Paramount settling with Donald Trump over this 60 Minutes interview lawsuit with Kamala Harris. There had been concerns within Paramount that not settling with the Trump lawsuit would halt its Skydance merger, which would need the approval of the FCC. So these guys knew that Trump, if he wanted to, he could block this merger, and then all hell breaks loose after that. Adam Schiff, the Democrat congressman out of California, went to X, and he's quoted as saying, "If Paramount and CBS ended the Late Show for political reasons, the public deserves to know and deserves better." Well, of course it's for political reasons, because Colbert made it about politics. Had he been down the line, had he given the audience comedy, had he not been so polarizing, he might still be on the air. And he is a victim of the Orange Messiah. And here's how. On July 14th, Stephen Colbert called out Paramount's $16 million settlement as a frivolous lawsuit against 60 Minutes. He also referred to it as a big fat bribe. Okay, this is what he said on air. On July 17th, which is today, 3 days later, CBS announced it's canceled The Late Show. The question is, will Colbert stay quiet now? Because he still has a whole year to go after Trump. Or a whole year to say whatever he wants now. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about anything. I mean, they could fire him before, but they probably want to pay out his contract. This is always about politics and money. The FCC could have made this merger a living hell. Skydance made it clear to Paramount and their stockholders, get rid of the Trump news, just pay the guy off. That's how the big boys play it. They pay you off when they're in trouble, and the merger will go through without a hitch. And I'm sure that they got reassurances from the Trump administration that would happen. Now, conspiracy theorists will say that this is Colbert losing his job under suspicious circumstances. CBS, as we've said, has made it clear this was a financial decision. And late night shows are increasingly a financial burden on networks amid diminishing returns, diminishing audiences, some of whom prefer to consume shows in bite-sized chunks. TikTok, YouTube, these social media sites, they air out 5-minute pieces or 3-minute pieces, 40-second pieces, and that's what people like now. Attention spans aren't the same as they used to be. No company ever got into the business of losing money. But with mergers like the impending one between Paramount and Skydance, Skydance, of course, is a huge media company. The settlement with Trump is the bottom line that had to happen. The bottom line has never been more important than settling with Trump. Now, CBS, of course, is used to this type of controversy because Letterman was a frequent critic of CBS, but in a more comedic and biting way. Letterman made plenty of political jokes, of course, always one-sided. But the political humor was Colbert's bread and butter since his days at the Colbert Report. He morphed into something closer to a more traditional host when he moved to CBS as he left the Comedy Central. But his monologues, that's the opening of the show, often included ripping apart Donald Trump, and only Donald Trump, or maybe some Republicans that were making the news. Canceling Colbert, in many people's eyes, will be a black eye on the Paramount merger. But Skydance and Paramount don't care. Because this move was coming as speculation was swirling about the future of another comedian that is left-leaning, and his name is Jon Stewart. And he was the host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central. Comedy Central is owned by Paramount, which will soon be owned by Skydance. Stewart is a brutal critic about the Paramount settlement. On Thursday, today, Stewart said on his weekly show, his podcast, that he didn't know if The Daily Show would be canceled after the merger. And I quote, "They haven't called me yet and said, like, don't get too comfortable in the office," Stewart says. "But let me tell you something. I've been kicked out of shittier establishments than that. We'll land on our feet. No, I honestly don't know." And end quote from Stewart. Stewart probably does know. Their agents, if you're in this business, your agent will give you a heads up and say, "Listen, this is what's happening. This is our game plan. This is how we're going to renegotiate your exit strategy or your contract negotiations for your exit strategy." And they try to do as much media play to save face as they possibly can, because you of course you want to get another job. Now, for Paramount, the fallout from the settlement is really, really going to hurt their reputations. They didn't back CBS. I'm sorry, they didn't back 60 Minutes. And this is where this whole damn thing came from. 60 Minutes used to be the gold standard for investigative journalism, but they screwed up. They've been screwing up for so long that they've lost all credibility. And this is the scary part. This is the scary landscape that used to be legitimate media. Now, it's not just CBS or Paramount. ABC News also settled a suit with Trump that most experts think they could have won. And now Trump, as his different way of being involved in politics, different way of using the bully pulpit, has turned the media into basically a punching bag. It's gotten to the point, meanwhile, that even Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, has been trying to cozy up to Trump. Social media, Mark Zuckerberg has been cozying up to Trump. And the White House has been stacking briefings with Trump-friendly personalities posing as reporters. And sometimes it's so obvious that you're thinking, well, Trump is no better than these left-wing nuts. And so the late night humor is over at CBS, if you ever thought it was humorous. And it'll be over on after May 2026. And there is another victim of the Orange Messiah, because Trump has done it again. No, I don't think there's ever been a politician that has dealt a blow to the media like this guy has. And the media has only themselves to blame, because they have not done a proper job in putting forth stories that are credible. And that's why these guys like Bezos and Zuckerberg, and even a lot of like Skydance with this merger, a lot of them are trying to keep Trump happy so he doesn't go on a rampage against them and disrupt mergers and corporate dealings, stockholder meetings, advertising, cutting off advertising money. He's such a monster to journalism and media that they don't know how to handle him because he's so different. He's not just a politician. He's not a politician. He's a guy with a bully pulpit who he says what he wants because he doesn't give a shit. And Colbert learned the hard way. And now he's gone. And the whole late night show franchise is gone. Now, what will CBS do after this? Probably nothing. They'll probably put on some old TV shows and reruns and syndicated shows. And, people love syndication. Advertisers love syndication. Affiliates love syndication. And Colbert will probably go back to some cable TV network, or maybe even a podcast. That's what everybody's doing now. And that'll be that. Late night television is pretty much dead. And Fallon will probably be next in 2028. But we don't care because we have so many more options, so many better options, like this show here. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And be careful out there, my friends. Satan is always busy, as you know. Be a man. Have a backbone, because common sense and masculinity are worth standing up for. Good night, Stephen Colbert. We'll see you later.